Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is the Acer Swift 7, which is an extraordinarily thin and light notebook. It's about 0.4 inches thick and about 2.6 pounds, and while that doesn't make it the lightest notebook on the market, it's still pretty compact, and it's definitely one of the thinnest. You're not going to find a lot of laptop computers that are less than 0.4 inches thick. It's a premium-looking device, and it's got a premium price tag. Sells for over $1,000 for the most part. It has a list price of about $1,100. I've seen it for as little as $9.99 as of the recording of this video. Shortly after the laptop was released, it sells for about $1,050. This particular unit was sent to me by Acer for purposes of this review, and I will be sending it back to them when I'm finished with the review. But I wanted to show you a little bit about what you get for $1,000 and discuss sort of the pros and cons of this laptop. In terms of design, I mean, it's definitely one of the nicest laptops that I've used in a while. Not only is it very thin and light, but it also has a pretty great keyboard and touchpad, and the 13.3-inch Full HD display looks pretty good too. I'll show you the display a little bit more in a moment. First, let's take a quick look at the keyboard and touchpad. Touchpad, one of the widest that I've used. It's 5.5 inches across, 2.5 inches up and down, and it supports multi-touch gestures. And the keyboard has a layout that is really one of the best that I've used on an Acer laptop in a while. Instead of cramming a whole bunch of keys into the lower right-hand section here like they've done in the last few laptops I've tried, we've got most of the function keys have been moved to the top row, and here we've just got arrow keys, page up, page down, home, and end. Much easier than usual to sort of get them by feel without having to look down at my hands. The power button is here next to delete. It's in the same row as the function keys. I found that I've gotten kind of used to that, having used a couple of different laptops with that arrangement. And even if you do press it, it's not going to automatically turn off the laptop. So it's not the most awkward placement, although, you know, I do kind of prefer to have it above or on the side or somewhere else. So let's talk a little bit about some of the limitations with this compact notebook. First one's pretty obvious here. There's only 3 ports. We've got a headset jack and 2 USB 3.1 Type-C ports here. So the nice thing about those is that this power brick can actually plug into either port. It's a USB Type-C power brick that looks sort of like a typical laptop charger. But say you've already got something plugged into one and you need to charge, doesn't matter. You don't have to unplug it and plug it. You can just go ahead and plug into either one. If you've got USB Type-C accessories, you're good to go, but if you need to connect a USB flash drive or other things, then you might need some sort of adapter. And in the box, you get 2 of them. You've got this HDMI adapter, so that's what you would use to connect an external display, and you've got this USB adapter, which allows you to plug in any sort of USB 3.0 accessories with a full-size port. Now, I've recently bought a different laptop that has a USB Type-C port and a phone with USB Type-C, so I'm starting to go all in on the design. So I've also bought myself a couple of accessories. So here's a smaller adapter that you can just sort of plug in here if you need to plug in a mouse or something. And I also wanted an Ethernet adapter, so I decided to go ahead and get one that is also a USB hub. So I can plug this in, plug in Ethernet, and have a couple of different USB accessories. So when you buy your first sort of USB Type-C device, you might be complaining that there's all sorts of accessories that you currently have that you can't use anymore, but you can get adapters and you can get other things that allow you to sort of revive your devices. So it's not really the end of the world. There is no SD or micro SD card slot though, which can be a little bit annoying if you wanted to transfer photos from a camera or do something else with SD card transfers. You'll need to get some sort of external adapter for that, or plug your phone or camera or something else directly into one of these USB ports. So that's the first limitation. Second limitation is in terms of the processor. This laptop has an Intel Core i5 7Y54 processor, and Core i5 sounds okay, right? Like that's sort of your middle-of-the-road Core i series. Well, this is a 7th generation Core i5 7.5 watt processor, so it uses about half the energy of a 15-watt laptop processor, which is more commonly found in laptops, particularly in this price range, but also even in less expensive devices. So the Core i5 7Y54 is actually the spiritual successor of the Core M5 from previous generations. And it actually offers pretty great performance, but it's not as fast as other Core i5 chips or even some Core i3 chips. And so you can find benchmark results and more details about sort of the raw processing power and performance at liliputing.com, where I've got a couple of charts and other information. In terms of day-to-day performance, though, it really feels fine. I mean, I as a web worker, spend a lot of time with the Google Chrome web browser open with 10, 20 different tabs at the same time. It does not slow down, does not have problems doing that. But if you need something that's going to have serious number crunching capabilities or be able to play games, this might not be the best machine for you. And you would think that one of the benefits of having that low power processor would be great battery life, but if you look at the bottom here, you notice that the battery is built into the case, not easy to remove. You can undo the screws and get at the inside, but it's not recommended. And it's so thin, it can't have a big battery, right? Well, it doesn't. It has a fairly small battery and it gets about 5 hours of battery life. And that's today. If you hang on to this for a couple of years and go through a lot of charge cycles, you might get less than 5 hours, say 4 hours or 3 hours. And so you might spend a lot of time plugging it in. So those are sort of the big disadvantages. The processor's not the fastest, but it is fast enough for a lot of things. There's not a lot of ports, but you can use adapters, and then there's the battery issue. There's really not that much you can do about that, short of investing in a third-party battery that I suppose you could carry around. And that's something I actually did a couple of years ago, is I got this big 1.1 pound battery that I could use to hang on to an older laptop for a little bit longer. But what's the point in getting a 2.6 pound laptop if you're going to carry around a pound battery? So anyways, let's take a look at performance. Just go ahead and power it up. It ships with Windows 10, has 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. And you can see it boots really quickly here. I'm going to go ahead and log into Windows. And just do a couple of things real quick here.
It's a little device that looks sort of like a handheld game system.
So here's the volume.
It basically is, but it's also a full...
I had not actually meant to do that.
Full-fledged Windows computer. So in addition to having these gaming buttons up here and a 5.5-inch 720p display, you've got...
So it's 1080p video playing in one window. Let's go ahead and open up a website in another. Show you scrolling. And as I mentioned, I've been able to do basic web work with easily over a dozen tabs, and the machine doesn't slow down. Now, when it comes to things like transcoding video or playing games, it's not necessarily the fastest machine, but it is fast enough for the sort of work that I do, and it's been really pleasant to use. The only real downside is the battery life. Again, it's not as fast as some cheaper laptops that I've tested, but in such a thin and light package, that's something that's fairly easy to ignore, especially when it really doesn't feel any slower when it comes to day-to-day performance. It's only when you're doing things like rendering video that you start to notice how much of a problem it is. Do a little zooming. I don't know why I was zooming in an ad instead of an article, but you get the idea. And just for fun, let's go ahead and open up 3D Mark here. Now you can find more details on benchmarks and other results at Liliputing.com. I just want to show you a little bit that even though it does have a fairly low power processor, it can handle some sorts of gaming activities. I'm not going to run through the whole thing, but I'll just sort of show you what it looks like. I do tend to prefer using a mouse to a touchpad, so I've wound up spending a lot of time with this dongle plugged in and then using that connected to a mouse. It's not the simplest solution, but it works. But the touchpad is actually one of the better touchpads that I've used. And again, the keyboard is, I've been sort of complaining about Acer keyboards for years, and this one is actually not much nicer than on the laptop that I recently bought, which happens to be an Acer. I kind of wish that I had this keyboard. The machine that I bought was substantially cheaper, though, and has a faster processor, but it also has a fairly noisy fan, whereas this one is silent during operation. Screen opens to about that angle, and you can see that the viewing angles are pretty good. It is a glossy display, and it's not a touchscreen display. Another thing I should point out, you get on a lot of premium laptops that you do not get here, backlit keyboard. So the keys are nice, evenly spaced. I like the arrow key section here, but it does not have backlit keys. So if you're somebody who's looking for that, you're not going to get it in this particular notebook. while the loading time for this demo is kind of long, it actually runs reasonably smoothly. And as a non-gamer, it's easier for me to show you this demo than it is for me to try to play some games. So I just wanted to show you that while this is not necessarily a machine that I would recommend if you're looking for something just for gaming, it can handle some gaming type activities. And if you go to liliputing.com, you can find the charts with 3D benchmarks, 3D Mark benchmark results, and some others. All right, that's enough of that. I'm going to show you one more thing. Let's go ahead and plug in that USB flash drive and restart the computer. And I'm going to hit the F12 key. Now, in order to do this, you first need to actually hit the F2 key and go into the BIOS or UEFI settings and enable the F12 boot menu. But once you've done that, it allows you to boot from an external drive. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm going to show you a little Ubuntu 16.10, which is the latest version of Ubuntu Linux with the XFCE desktop environment. Now, this is not installed onto local storage. This is running from a flash drive, but it gives you an idea that really with doing minimal work other than enabling that F12 boot menu, I was able to get everything to load up just fine here. The wireless works, the audio works, and even the function key buttons work. So we can do things like adjust the screen brightness and volume. And let me just log into a network. Terminal works. And audio and video works just fine.
That lets you pay it forward to someone less fortunate. I just changed to make, but it's not a touchscreen tablet style device. So I disabled, for instance, the on-screen keyboard, so when I touch this, instead of having it pop up for a second before you start typing.
So there you go. That is Ubuntu Linux, or Xubuntu Linux actually, running on the Acer Swift 7. So it supports Linux, has a reasonably fast processor given that it's a low power processor, has a really nice premium looking design, has a pretty nice display, a great touchpad, a decent keyboard, very compact design, but fairly limited battery life, and the processor is maybe not as fast as what you might be expecting for a laptop that sells for $1,000. So is it worth $1,000? Well, it depends. I mean, in terms of sort of the portability factor, I think it's really kind of hard to beat in terms of something that's sort of this nice and this compact. But the fact that it's only got about 5 hours of battery life on day one sort of makes me think that it might not necessarily be the best thing for road warriors. If Acer had maybe put a slightly larger battery in here and given it better battery life but made it a little bit heavier, then maybe it'll be a little bit more attractive. But, you know, battery life matters more to me than it matters to some people. So if you're one of those people, I think it's pretty, well, it's pretty. I mean, that's what it is. It's really one of the nicest looking laptops, and I've really enjoyed using it. I'm not sure that it's something that I personally would spend $1,000 on, but in terms of sort of design and functionality, I've been really impressed with what the Core i5 7Y5 or processor is capable of. 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage puts it on par with a lot of other laptops in this class. And in terms of portability, it's really pretty hard to beat, other than, again, that limited battery life. It would be nice if it had a few more ports. I'm not entirely sure why there aren't some USB ports on the other side, for example, but the USB Type-C is pretty versatile, so once you've got adapters, you can do all sorts of things, like you plug it into power, Ethernet, external displays, and so forth. So those 2 ports can go a pretty long way, and it does ship with those dongles so that you can, at the very least, use old-fashioned USB Type-A accessories as well as an HDMI monitor. So that's the Acer Swift 7. This is Brad Linder with Liliputing. You can find more details about the laptop at liliputing.com.